My younger brother is a gambler. After accumulating tens of millions of debts, he committed suicide by jumping off a building. After his death, creditors came to the door and scared my parents into the hospital, forcing me to pay off my younger brother's debts. They broke my hand and threatened, "If you dare to die, I will kill your whole family." For the sake of my parents, I worked hard to pay off the debts. 10 years later, I finally paid off all the gambling debts and bought a car and a house for my parents to retire. But I was diagnosed with terminal gastric cancer and became seriously ill and bedridden. At this time, my younger brother who came back to life returned. Thanks to mom and dad for making me fake my death and escape back then. Now I can come back and inherit the inheritance. Later, they directly gave up on my treatment and left me in the hospital. Until I died, no one claimed my body. When I opened my eyes again, I went back to the day when my younger brother committed suicide by jumping off a building. My son, how can I live if you just leave like this? My mom's eyes were red and her hands were slightly trembling as she stroked the coffin beside her. This is Andy's morning haul. The piercing cries pierced my eardrums. I came to my senses. There was no stomach pain caused by excessive fatigue and no suffocating despair before death. I was actually reborn. In my previous life, it was at Andy's funeral that I was beaten and had my hand broken and became permanently disabled. My mom covered her heart with a look of grief on her face and acted very realistically. It was only when she saw me that she restrained her emotions and walked up to me. "Did you get the money back?" I held the shoulder strap of my backpack tightly and took a few steps back. I tried to make my expression look as relaxed as possible. The amount is too large and there are many procedures. I can't get a loan all at once. My mom was visibly disappointed and glared at me angrily. "Are you stupid? If you can't get it out, make a fuss. Lie down with a knife at the door of their bank. Dare they not give it?" Seeing me remain silent, my mom started to wipe her tears again. "If only you had been willing to help Andy back then. He wouldn't have jumped off the building. You have money but you won't lend it. You killed your younger brother. It's all your fault." She deliberately raised her voice. Everyone's eyes turned to me. My mom's words were like sharp knives of moral kidnapping hanging over my head. Looking at this elaborate fake death drama they set up for my younger brother, I only felt cold in my heart. My mom put all the blame for Andy's death on me. The way relatives and friends looked at me became contemptuous. She restrained her expression. "If we don't have money to pay the interest, what if those people come to the door? There is $500,000 in cash in the backpack. It is the money I got from the bank loan. In my previous life, under her constant PUA, I willingly took on Andy's huge debt. When the debt collectors came to the door, my parents suddenly had palpitations and were admitted to the hospital, leaving me alone to face everything. My $500,000 in cash disappeared without a trace. I asked them for help, but my mom said, "We are old and need this money for retirement. You are young and can still earn money. Can't you think of a way?" And my dad questioned me. "Your younger brother is dead. Do you also want to force us to death? Money or us? You choose." I couldn't choose. The debt collector's threat, and that if I dared to seek death like Andy, they would kill my whole family. In fact, from the very beginning, my parents just regarded me as a tool for squeezing money. I closed my eyes and casually put my hands on my mom's shoulders. "Don't be afraid. If they come to the door, I will be there." My mom smiled a gratified lie. I lowered my body and whispered in her ear, "I have booked a plane ticket. I will leave today." My mom was stunned for a while and stared at me. Incredible lie. "What about your younger brother? He hasn't been buried yet. Are you going to leave him alone? Are you human?" I looked innocent. "Anyway, they won't do anything to a dead person. At most, they will check to see if he is really dead. If not, they will pull him out and whip the corpse to vent their anger." I paused. "It's better than beating a living person into disability, right?" My mom was stunned for a second, and pushed me away. Nashwan's teeth lie. "You are so cruel." She lay on the coffin and cried sad lie. Even if I die today, I will die with Andy. No one cares about me. Fine. I will fulfill your deep mother-son affection. All relatives scolded me for being cruel while saying they were pitiful. They surrounded me and persuaded, Sam, it's not your aunt who is criticizing you. You didn't care about your younger brother before. Now you don't care about your parents. What you did is worse than a dog. That's right. At least a dog knows how to protect its master. A white-eyed wolf who doesn't care about his own parents. We are here today. You can't leave. I held on to my backpack and glanced coldly. It turns out that this is the purpose of my parents calling these relatives in a big way to prevent me from escaping. Me, dear uncles. Aunts. Uncles and aunts. You are really good to our family. Their faces lit up with smiles and they straightened their backs. That's right. Relatives should help each other. I laughed twice and stretched out my palm to them, then lend me 500,000 to use. Aunt. Don't you have 500,000? 20,000 is fine too. Don't worry. I will definitely pay it back. Whoever lends it to me. I don't have to leave. The morning hall was instantly silent. The people blocking me slowly moved away. My mom looked at those relatives in shock and opened her mouth but couldn't say a word. I went into the room and hid all the money and packed my clothes into a suitcase. My dad rushed into the room and stood at the door with his usual majestic posture. It is only right and proper to pay off debts. Issues should not be cowards. In my previous life, who took the lead in pretending to be sick and hiding in the hospital? He took my money and took my mom and Andy on a trip around the world. They didn't come back until I was almost dying from exhaustion. As the eldest son, you should share hardships with us. How can you run away? Share hardships? After they pretended to be sick and were admitted to the hospital, they took my money and disappeared. And I was entangled by debt collectors. All my documents were seized. I was forced to pay off debts day after day, and year after year. I became disabled, and could only earn money at construction sites. The bricks were hot. The calluses on my palms became thicker and thicker. I ate Taiwan steamed buns and drank tap water. I lived under the overpass. I lived like this for 3 years. However, paying off the debts was still far away. I begged my parents to help me. I even thought about seeking death for a while. But my parents said, if you die, they will find us. Do you want mom and dad to live like you at their old age? Later, they cut off contact with me. Because they were afraid of being found by the debt collectors, and becoming like me. Unexpectedly, within 5 years, I went from a contractor to a real estate executive. All my investments were very successful. I paid off the debts, bought a house, and prepared for my wedding. But during the pre-emeritive physical examination, I was diagnosed with terminal gastric cancer. Before I could enjoy life, I was sentenced to death. At this time, Andy came back to life. Before I died, he laughed at me for being stupid, taking all the consequences for him, and laying strike down a foundation for him. They signed the document to give up treatment, and left me in the hospital to wait for death. Really? Stupid. What is that ridiculous family affection? I suddenly changed my mind and put down my suitcase. Dad, I think what you said makes sense. How can I leave at this time? My dad's expression relaxed. Everything seemed to be as he had expected. It's good that you've come to your senses. Come out and burn some incense for your younger brother. I haven't done anything wrong. Why should I run away? I should return all the consequences they should bear to them. For I put on mourning clothes and bowed 3 times in front of Andy's memorial tablet. My gaze fell on that ice coffin. Through the glass, Andy's face was covered with a thick layer of powder. After deliberately holding his breath, he really looked no different from a dead person. No one would carefully check if he was really dead. I lay on the coffin and wailed loudly, "Poor younger brother. I said long ago that gambling would lead to your doom. Don't worry. I will definitely take good care of our parents. And you can rest assured and leave your fiancé to me. Don't worry. Younger brother. You can go in peace." It's better for me than for others. Actually, I have liked her for a long time. Thank you for your help, SB. Fulfill a wish. There was a burst of sighs around. Butterfly looked at me in shock. Sam? I'm serious. Anyway, you haven't got married yet. I can accept it. I will definitely take good care of you for my younger brother. I lowered my head so that they couldn't see my face. My shoulders were shaking violently. I covered my mouth tightly and tried my best not to laugh out loud. But Andy could clearly see my smile. He could really endure. He just died. Is it appropriate for you to say these things? Butterfly looked at me. The corner of her mouth slightly curved. I approached her and whispered, Really? What if Andy raised a mistress with your money? Mortgaged the house you bought to pay off debts? And even faked his death to avoid debts? I can help you get it back. Do you believe me? There was a flash of hatred in her eyes. She stared at the person in the coffin, then looked up at my parents who were heartbroken. Suddenly she was extremely firm. Yes, I will help you. I was a little surprised, but I accepted it soon. With an ally, things became unexpectedly easy. Butterfly cooperated very well and took my hand. He is finally dead. We can be together openly. Me? She got into the role so quickly. My mom pulled us apart and glanced subconsciously at the person in the coffin. You too. Behaving like this in front of a dead person. What does it look like? I stood up straight and grinned. After Andy is cremated, I will go to propose marriage. I patted the coffin. Don't worry. I will live in your wedding house. Live a good life with your fiancé. And slowly pay off your debts. I emphasized the word debt very heavily. Andy's corpse twitched faintly twice, and the veins on his forehead also twitched. I still wanted to say something, but my mom interrupted sharply. Enough. Beast. Even if I die here, I will not agree to you to being together. My mom grabbed Butterfly's arm and pushed her out forcefully. Get out of my house. My son doesn't want such a shameless woman like you. I protected her in front of me. In the chaos, I stuffed the backpack into her arms. You leave first. I will find you after I deal with everything. Butterfly understood my luck and left without looking back with the money. At last, I felt relieved. I took out my bank card and put it in my mom's palm. This is all my savings. Don't be angry. I have promised to take on Andy's debts. Won't Mom and Dad help us fulfill a wish us? My mom's indifferent face finally softened. She had achieved her goal. She was probably thinking that even if we were together in the future, we would still have to pay off debts endlessly. My mom carefully put that bank card into her pocket. The corner of her mouth curved. Okay. We'll talk about your matter later. 5. I walked around the coffin and ticked off the plug of the ice coffin. The temperature is now 37 or 38 degrees. Let's see how long you can stay in this coffin. I still thought it wasn't enough. I opened the window and moved the brazier next to his coffin. The brazier burned more and more vigorously. A thin layer of water, mist formed on the transparent glass coffin cover. The sharp-eyed dance suddenly screamed. Mom and Dad, look. Andy's face has changed color. This is corpse transformation. There was a thin layer of sweat on Andy's face. As there was more and more sweat, his makeup became more and more messy. Finally, it was black, white, and yellow. Relatives gathered around one after another. After a careful look, they gasped. This is inauspicious. It must be inauspicious. My God. It must be that Sam's nonsense just now angered him. I looked innocent and pretended to be afraid and swallowed. Then what should we do? Call someone to take it away quickly. I took out my phone. But before I could make the call, my dad pressed it hard. What are you doing? For such an inauspicious thing. Of course we should call the crematorium to come and take it away, and cremate it immediately. My dad patted my shoulder. You are still young. You don't understand such things. I have contacted them long ago. They will come soon. The people from the crematorium came very quickly. They nodded to my parents and went through the procedures. My heart skipped a beat. So in my previous life, they used this method to replace Andy. Then came the drama of my parents pretending to be sick. Those debt collectors didn't appear until after they all left. 6. I threw myself forward and grabbed the coffin. Mom and Dad. I can't bear it. I can't bear Andy. I better follow and take a look. My mom impatiently pulled me away. There's no need. Leave professional matters to professionals. Professional? I don't believe it. I stood in front of the coffin. I don't feel at ease. Show me your certificates. Those people looked at each other and pushed me away. What are you messing around with? Is this something to joke about? Several big men surrounded me, looking domineering. The dead are the greatest. Don't you understand? My dad also chimed in and pulled me away. Get out of the way quickly. Don't block the way. I stood in front of the coffin and said seriously, Dad, don't you watch the news? Some people steal corpses to do all kinds of experiments. Do you want Andy to be restless even after death? They can't even show their identification. How suspicious. Under my instigation, several relatives also began to chime in. At this time, the role of relatives who like to watch the excitement and don't think it's a big deal comes in. Yes. Sister-in-law. You can't let people take Andy away casually. Proof. Your proof. Show your certificates. Human traffickers. Now you won't let go of corpses. Right? Those people were unable to defend themselves. I stood at the door and looked at my parents for help. My mom stammered and explained, as long as I trust them. Besides, there are no certificates for doing such things. My dad nodded, looking like the backbone. This corpse transformation is not a joke. Take it away, quickly. While saying this, he winked at those people and told them to act quickly. I shouted, no one is allowed to move. I have called the police. Naturally, I wouldn't give them a chance to speak. I continued to instigate relatives. You see that my parents are old and easy to bully. But I am not easy to bully. My uncles and aunts are not easy to bully either. In order to save face after not lending money just now, several tough relatives directly took brooms and snatched the coffin from those people while beating and scolding. In the back and forth, the coffin lid flipped over. Andy fell out of the coffin completely. Due to inertia, his body rolled down the stairs step by step. His head hit the wall heavily, and there were faintly some fresh red marks. My mom was shocked and hurriedly chased after him. My son. My son. There were exclamations all around. Everyone was so shocked that they didn't even dare to breathe. This has gone wrong. Suppressing my laughter, I quickly called on my relatives to drive these cheaters away. Although my dad was calm, his face became more and more ugly, and he couldn't say anything more. Andy was covered in injuries and his arm was dislocated. But he still continued to pretend to be dead. I'll see how long you can endure. 7. Everyone worked together to put him back in the coffin. My mom was sharp-eyed and found that the plug had fallen out. When she was about to plug it back in, I stopped her. I stepped forward and held my mom's arm. My gaze fell on the hand on her wrist. Mom, you've really had a hard time. Come on. Have a drink of water. Don't worry about me. She bent down to pick up the plug. I stepped on it hard with one foot. Now it was completely broken. She gave me a hard look. I said innocently, oh, it's broken. It's okay. Anyway, Andy won't be hot now, after such a commotion. Those debt collectors didn't come. My guess was confirmed. Those people were called by then after they got away. In my previous life, they arranged everything. Coincidentally, they got away. Coincidentally, they got sick. Coincidentally, they took my money. Coincidentally, they disappeared. Since that's the case, I will enter the game myself. My parents drove all those relatives away. In name, they said they wanted Andy to be quiet for a while and leave quietly. In fact, They wanted to find an opportunity to transfer him. My mom is not stupid. At a glance, she saw that Andy couldn't hold his breath in the coffin anymore. She deliberately pointed at the coffin. Oh, what's wrong with my son? Is it because they disturb you? Mom will tell them to leave now. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. As soon as these words came out, my timid relatives were so scared that they drilled out of the door one by one. No one wanted to be haunted by ghosts. I stood in front of the door and said calmly, Andy's corpse transformation represents that he has a lot of resentment. What if you leave and he follows you home? My aunt is most superstitious about these things. She slapped her head and nodded vigorously. She quickly put on her shoes and walked back into the room. Aunt, why don't you call a master to perform a ritual to dispel the resentment? Remember, it should be a very, very grand ritual. The more people there are, the better. When Andy comes back to life, on the spot, he has nowhere to escape. Aunt patted her chest and guaranteed, no problem. Leave it to me. My mom looked helplessly at my dad and gave him a look. Do it if you want. The sooner it's done, the sooner it's over. He comforted my mom with confidence and looked calm. A aunt moved quickly and invited a group of masters to perform release souls from purgatory. While they were setting up the ritual venue, my mom opened the coffin lid and let Andy relax for a while, and I stirred the brazier beside. The scattered sparks fell on Andy's skin. My mom felt sorry for him and blew on it. When relatives saw the scene, they couldn't help feeling sad. Big sister-in-law really loves her son. After the farewell, my dad covered the coffin with a black cloth. This is the custom of our hometown. After the ritual is done, it's time to send him off. Everyone nodded in agreement. After being covered by the black cloth, no one knows what happened in the coffin. A group of masters were performing rituals in the living room. We had to kneel down and lower our heads, and were not allowed to peek. Women had to go into the room to avoid it so as not to collide. So, is this why my dad is so confident? This is the last way to transfer Andy. I sent a message to that anonymous number. The time has come. After the ritual was over, my parents' faces were obviously much more relaxed. They went back to the room and started to pack Andy's things. I leaned against the door. Are you in such a hurry to pack? The first 7 days haven't passed yet. Dead people's things have to be burned. You don't understand. My parents packed quickly one by one. The bank card that belonged to me was also stuffed into that suitcase. There's no way to run. As soon as I finished speaking, the doorbell rang again. My mom rushed over to open the door and her face changed greatly. Why are you here? 9 dozens of debt collectors came and instantly filled the living room. The sense of oppression came head-on. My uneasiness was quickly suppressed. I know that this moment is when their retribution comes. My mom panicked for a while, and then calmed down and said, Andy is already dead. We just finished performing a ritual for him. But don't worry. We will definitely pay back the money. The boss snorted coldly and knocked the stick in his hand heavily on the table. It doesn't matter if the person is dead, as long as someone pays back the money. My mom raised her finger and pointed at me. This is my eldest son. All debts will be paid by him. Their gazes fell on me. After looking me over, pay the interest first or pay off the principal all at once? The boss in the lead put the stick behind him. My parents pushed me forward forcefully and stammered, Speak quickly. Didn't you promise to pay off Andy's debts? I turned to my mom and said, But I have already given you the money. My dad interrupted sharply, Don't talk nonsense. We didn't take your money. I stared at the suitcase in the corner. The card is inside. I can tell you the password. Please don't hurt my family. The difference in character is immediately apparent. The boss chose to believe me and ordered several subordinates to open the suitcase. The bank card was placed in the compartment, proving that what I said was true. Their expressions softened slightly. They logged into the online banking with the password I gave. After a while, the boss picked up the stick in his hand and pressed it against my chest. You dared to play tricks on me. I think you don't want to live anymore. The phone was thrown in front of me. The balance inside was 0. I quickly waved my hand and pointed at my parents. Relatives can testify. I gave the card to my parents on an impulse. After that, I have been here and haven't been able to transfer money. He glanced around and relatives nodded. The boss lowered his voice and stared at them. I must get the money today. You don't play tricks on me. So, where's the money? My parents' faces turned pale. At this moment, they realized that they had been tricked by me. Several debt collectors were not good people. The sticks in their hands hit the coffin hard. Where's the money? My mom was directly scared to tears and covered her heart. If you do this, I will call the police. My son is dead. Where can I get the money to pay you back? My dad gritted his teeth and snorted coldly. There is a debtor for every debt. I understand the rules of your business. 2-hand in the job. I still have a son here. You can do whatever you want with chopping off hands and feet. His tone was as relaxed as if he were buying groceries at a vegetable market. He even helped the boss come up with an idea. Several younger brothers nodded and agreed with my dad's statement one after another. They even began to quietly persuade the boss to finish the job and go back to report. The boss tacitly agreed to this idea and commanded several younger brothers to pounce on me. In that case, I walked up to the coffin, took a deep breath and shouted, "Dear big brothers, why don't you take his corpse away? I heard it's also very valuable. As people in this business, you should also be very familiar with the market, right?" I forcefully lifted the black cloth. The coffin was empty. Everyone around was suddenly stunned. They all stared at the empty coffin with wide eyes. The corpse is gone. There's really a corpse transformation. Oh my God. It's haunted. What's going on? I squatted down and kicked the brazier under the coffin. The intense fire roasted the coffin. After a while, there were painful screams from inside. "Ah! Save me! It's so hot! Is there anyone? Let me out!" Andy's voice came from under the coffin. Almost everyone present was in a panic and wanted to run out. Only my parents rushed towards the coffin and lifted the coffin lid. The bruised and swollen Andy rolled out from under the coffin. A large piece of flesh on his back had been burned off. He covered his wound and rolled on the ground. The hideous wound was still bleeding. My mom rushed up to support him. In the flurry, she accidentally touched his wound. Andy pushed my mom away hard and kicked over the brazier viciously. "It's all your bad idea. Do you really want to kill me?" My mom covered her chest and leaned against the corner. Tears dripped from the corner of her eye and she said a grieved lie. "Mom is doing this for you." The mother and son argued back and forth. The morning hall was in chaos. I said calmly, "Younger brother, why are you? You're still alive. That's great. Big brother, you can ask him for it." This sentence reminded everyone. Andy faked his death to push the debt to me. Aunt looked incredible, and was silent for a long time before saying, "Give me back the funeral gift I gave." As soon as she spoke, the remaining relatives naturally stretched out their hands. "So ungrateful. I helped your family so much. You should give me some hard work fee. Give me back the money I spent on firecrackers." In an instant, everyone in the hall became people asking for money. From asking for debts, it became a matter of who to pay back first and who to pay back later. My parents protected Andy and endured the scolding and beatings from all directions. My mom cried and shouted, "Sam, are you dead? Why don't you come and help?" My dad angrily cursed, "Rebellious son. You unfilial son. It's better to raise a dog than to have you. Are you angry now? Are you ashamed and angry now? In my previous life, I was the one who endured all this alone. If the knife doesn't stab you, you will never know the pain." I weakly said, "Mom and Dad, where did you take my 10 years of hard-earned money?" Of course they wouldn't look for me. I am also a victim. People stand on the side of interests, and are all on the same front. My parents were speechless and couldn't defend themselves. I transferred that sum of money and the 500 I borrowed to Butterfly. With the experience of doing business in my previous life, I just need to lie flat and make money following the same train of thought. My mom was forced into a corner and trembled. She actually spat out a mouthful of blood. Everyone was frightened and backed away. Everyone just wanted money. If there was a human life involved, no one could get the money. Everyone understood this truth. It's none of my business. It's not me. I didn't do it. Call 120. Call 120 quickly. Go. Go. Go quickly. My mom covered her stomach quickly. Her face was extremely pale and she fainted. This trick of pretending to be sick really works every time for her. After such a commotion, everyone left. Andy took advantage of the chaos and followed the ambulance to escape. Where can he escape to? As long as he is alive, those people will always find him. 12 as expected. Those people followed them to the hospital and watched at the door of the ward day and night. They took turns in 3 shifts in the morning, noon, and evening to stare at them. Even when Andy went to the toilet, they still guarded at the door. When there was no one around, they would drag him to a corner and beat him up. Day after day. This stalemate lasted for a week. Just when I thought they couldn't get away, they found Butterfly. My dad took Andy and knelt in front of Butterfly's house, with tears streaming down his face. He accused, "This woman who despises the poor and loves the rich sold our house. Drove us out. My wife is sick and can't move in the hospital. This woman took all our money and ran away. I almost forgot. After they left last time, Butterfly brought a group of cleaners to clean up that wedding house, and threw all the things of my parents and Andy into the garbage dump. That house was originally given by her parents for their marriage. Since my parents moved in, they have been living there. More and more people watched. Butterfly's parents are intellectuals. They have never seen such a scene of making trouble and being rascal. They were so angry that their faces turned red, and they explained that their daughter was not such a person. Butterfly protected her parents behind her. Andy, don't forget. We haven't got married yet. How did my things become yours? You stole my ID card to mortgage my house. If I hadn't found out in time, I would have been sold by you. Right? If you don't leave quickly, I will call the police or ask those big brothers to come and entertain you." Andy was stunned and seemed to realize something. Ashamed and angry, he shouted, "Bitch! Did you call those people that day? You have been having an affair with my brother for a long time. So you designed to harm me, right?" Butterfly hooked her broken hair on the shawl and nodded. "Yes. So what?" The furious Andy rushed forward and was firmly held down on the ground by a group of bodyguards. "I won't let you go. Wait for me." I stood behind Andy. "Won't let who go?" The moment he saw me, his pupils constricted and he pounced on me like a mad dog. According to their plan, I should have been chopped off hands and feet by those people by now. Andy checked my asset status and found that I held 50 of the shares in a company. He asked those people to make trouble at my company. Surely they would get the money. Unfortunately, Andy didn't know that the legal person of that company was his creditor. With the business experience of my previous life, I led the boss to enter the real estate industry. In just 1 month, we got our capital back. I turned to those big brothers and said, "I was right. Sure enough, he is here." My dad stood up and walked up to me and raised his hand to slap me. I took a step back and he stumbled and fell to the ground. "You beast. You want to kill your younger brother. You don't want us to live well either. Do you? You don't even listen to your dad's words anymore. Do you?" That look was as if he wanted to devour me alive to be satisfied. I ignored him. I took Butterfly and walked into the house, and closed the door heavily. Outside the door, my dad finally broke down and knelt on the ground, playing the victim. "Dear big brothers, let my son go. He really has no money. You are taking his life." Andy hid behind my dad. "Give me a few more days. I promise. I will really pay it back." He crawled and rolled to the door to admit his mistake. "Big brother. Butterfly. I was wrong. Save me. Those big brothers are not fools. After being deceived by faking death, how could they easily let them go this time? They dragged Andy into an uninhabited corner. Only painful pleas for mercy could be heard. 13. My business was booming. I transferred all my funds overseas. The boss became my best partner. And next news I received about my family was when my aunt came to me for help. What on earth did your dad do? They sued all of us in court. You know, a lot of people. Think of a way. It turned out that my mom's condition in the hospital didn't improve. He couldn't afford the medical expenses and couldn't pay off the debts. So he could only blackmail all the relatives who were present at that time, including the debtors and me. As soon as I received the court summons, my dad found someone to contact me. Your mom is dying. Go back and see her for the last time. My heart skipped a beat. This fake drama has become too real. It wasn't until the hospital issued a critical notice that I was sure that something really had happened. Seeing Andy again. He had lost one hand and the scar on his face was extremely obvious. It seems that he has also paid a heavy price during this period. His eyes were full of viciousness. I realized that it wasn't so simple. Andy took a few steps forward. When he found that there were a group of bodyguards following me, he stepped back. My mom's body lay on the hospital bed. Her face was pale and emaciated. And the heart monitor had also stopped beating. The fake drama became real. Andy angrily pushed me away. They forced Mom to death. You are also an accomplice. Okay. I know. I will pay for the funeral expenses. He quickly blocked me. Give me 15 million and I will withdraw the lawsuit. I was stunned. After such a long time, there is still no progress. I know you have money. What's wrong with you helping me? I am your younger brother. We are a family and should share hardships. Mom is dead. You can't ignore me. My dad was in the corner, watching this farce in silence. I sneered. Isn't your dad still alive? If you want to sue, I will accompany you to the end. But, can you afford a lawyer? 14. No one expected that he would apply for legal aid and take my mom's stinking body to court. Everyone was stunned by his crazy move. After the court session began, there were many people present that day and many witnesses. Everyone began to describe the scene of that day one by one. Basically, it was more or less the same. In the chaos, no one knew what had happened to my mom. The medical records proved that she had suffered a huge impact, resulting in a ruptured spleen. Andy cried heartbreakably and pointed at all the relatives present. It's you who killed my mom. Give me back my mom. From now on, I am a child without a mom. He glared at me angrily. From mom's hospitalization to her death, you didn't even come to see her once. You are most responsible. All the things that day were because of your troublemaking. I applauded and affirmed his performance. I smiled calmly. I really didn't go to the hospital to see her. But I paid all the medical expenses. I took out the surveillance record at home that day. Frame by frame on the big screen, it could be seen that after Andy rolled out of the coffin, he punched my mom in the abdomen. Then her face turned pale. After the people quarreled, she vomited blood. As for later, although the rescue was successful at first, she suddenly died of serious illness. I invited a witness. My dad slowly walked onto the witness stand and choked up for a while. When I went to buy food that day and came back, she was almost dying. Obviously she was fine before I left. At that time, there were only 2 of them in the ward. He also didn't let the doctor take the last first aid measures. I have to suspect that it was him. As soon as these words came out, everyone was in an uproar. No one expected that the most powerful evidence was said by this father who had always protected him. Andy was ashamed and angry. He picked up the materials at hand and threw them at him. Dad, are you crazy? Judge, he has Alzheimer's disease. His words can't be trusted. Did Sam give you benefits? Are you helping him make false testimony? Old bastard. Speak. My dad closed his eyes in disappointment and covered his head and squatted on the ground crying bitterly. I raised my hand and motioned. In that case, I request an autopsy. Andy panicked. Mom is already dead. You won't even let her rest in peace. Are you human? I don't agree. Dad. Say something quickly. My dad nodded silently. In an instant, his temples turned white and he looked 10 years older. 15 since the day I went to Butterfly's house. I had privately found my dad. I told him the truth about my mom being sick and hospitalized and gave him a sum of money to pay for my mom's medical expenses. I deliberately told Andy. As expected, he stole that sum of money and continued to gamble. After being discovered by my dad, Andy stubbornly believed that he could turn things around at once. As a result, my mom almost couldn't pay for the medical expenses. In desperation, my dad had to come and beg me again. And my condition was to transfer my mom to another hospital and let them give up on Andy. My dad gave up. But once people have doubts and dissatisfaction, they will gradually magnify them to the extreme. It wasn't until my mom died that he realized how stupid his decision was. After the autopsy results came out, Andy was arrested. My mom had fibrotic internal organs. Obviously, she died of poisoning. Andy still said, she did it voluntarily. It really wasn't me. It wasn't until the case was investigated clearly and he was sentenced to death, that Andy was finally desperate and knelt down to beg my dad to save him. This time my dad turned and left very decisively. With white hair on his head, he humbly begged, Sam, Dad only has you as a relative left. You won't leave me alone, will you? You promised me that if I came out to testify, you would support me in my old age. I nodded. I have arranged a place with beautiful scenery for you. I guarantee that no one will disturb your peace again. Half a month later, I received a call from my dad. What kind of ghost place is this? I can't get enough to eat. There is no bathroom when I go to the toilet. I can't even run out. Come and pick me up quickly. I am not satisfied with this place at all. I was stunned for a moment and sneered, but I have paid for 20 years for you. You can live here until you die. After hanging up the phone, my heart was finally at ease. I finally left my messed up family. 16 when I was about to go abroad. Butterfly also followed. She dragged her suitcase and followed me vigorously. What a coincidence. President Xu. Are you interested in taking me with you? I coughed lightly twice. Haven't I taken you with me many times? You have participated in all my businesses. Butterfly's gaze fell on my face. But you forgot something. I was puzzled and quickly scanned my mind. What? Didn't you say that we love each other and you have had a crush on me for a long time? Why? Don't you let me participate in the relationship? I suddenly felt my face getting hot and gradually becoming burning hot. But looking at her bright and lovely face, I couldn't say a word of rejection. Then, participate? Later, I asked her why she trusted me so firmly. Butterfly was standing in front of the mirror in a wedding dress. Do you believe in past and present lives? I believe. The end.